Welcome to the regular meeting of the Wooster City Council scheduled for this October 2nd, 2017. It is after 7:30 p.m. Our next scheduled meeting will be Monday, October 16th, 2017. Mr. Paula, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ansel.
Here.
Mr. Cavan.
Here.
Ms. Knappich.
Here.
Mr. Myers. Mr. Sanders.
Here.
Mr. Silvestri.
Here.
Mr. Albright.
Here. And Mr. Myers did notify us ahead of time that he would not be present this evening. At this time, I ask you to stand and join the members of the City Council in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The agenda will remain as presented. There was a little tweak from what was emailed to what's on your desk tonight in terms of moving the public hearing from item 4 to item 5, where it should be, thanks to Mr. Paul. I seek a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the September 18th.
So moved, Mr. President.
A motion by Mr. Ansel to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Knappich. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The September 18th, 2017 council minutes are approved. Mr. Mayor, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Breitendijk and council members, and nice to be here this evening, and some good news to share and some other things going on in the city, but we'll start with the good news here. Just hot off of the magazine stands is the Money Magazine article that we've been talking about, where they are recognizing our city as one of the best places to live in the United States. I'll pass this around so you can get a look at it. I really went out to buy you all a magazine copy for your own tonight, and they were out. So I couldn't do it. So what I did was I took the magazine, I highlighted a couple of spots, and I'll go through some of the methodology so that you and the public understand it a little bit better. I handed out a sheet to you that is compiling of the 50 top places. Now, when we talked earlier, we said they listed 100 best places to live, and they did, but the only place you see that is on their website. The magazine only lists the top 50, and you will notice I highlighted our city at number 37 in yellow for you, but if you look down through that list, there's no other Ohio city in the top 50. So that's a pretty neat honor that we were able to make the cut of the top 50. Just wanted to go through the ranking a little bit, just to show you how much of an honor it is to have made this. Money Magazine's been ranking the best places to live for over 30 years now. The basic elements, they say, that make some a great place to live rarely change. Good schools, a good economy, and good neighbors. Then they say there are preferences that shift from time to time, that move it around. For this year's Best Places to Live list, we chose to focus on towns with a population of 10,000 to 100,000. So 10,000 is about just about Orville. 100,000 would be Akron area, Toledo, those kind of cities. So that's the comparison that we were a part of. So with a population of 10,000 to 100,000, to avoid the biggest cities while shining a light on smaller towns and affordable suburbs. We examined dozens of different variables that speak to the good life, including growing jobs, quality schools, cultural and recreational resources, and affordable homes. The traits fell into 8 broad categories: cost of living, how steep are local taxes, for instance, The economy, how many jobs are being created. Education, what's the graduation rate. Housing, is real estate appreciating and are homes affordable. Crime, how's the crime risk. Convenience, are commutes onerous. Cultural and recreational amenities, do you have access to libraries, museums, and entertainment? And an overall sense of pleasantness, are the skies sunny? So those are the criteria, these 8 broad categories. I just want to highlight, we've always said that jobs and our economy is such an important thing for our town, because that's the lifeblood that allows us to do all the other things. Well, right here, you know, the economy, how many jobs are being created? I think the Daisy Corporation, I think Gojo, I think expansion of like Seaman Corporation, and all of those good things that we've been doing, Luke's expansions, you know, all helped us in that. But education, the graduation rate, now we've always said how important the schools are to our community, because they really do matter. That's what people look to when they want a place to live. And of course our downtown, that sense of place that people value. So how did they do it? Again, looked only at places with populations between 10,000 and 100,000. They eliminated any place that had more than double the national crime risk, less than 85% of its state's median household income, or a lack of ethnic diversity. So they eliminated those places out. This gave us 2,400 places throughout the United States that we were in comparison with. We then collected about 170,000 different data points to narrow the list. We put the greatest weight on economic health, cost of living factors, and public school performance. So right there's what they said, that made their decisions, and we just talked about how important those are. Rankings derive from more than 70 separate types of data. So there were a lot of metrics that went into this. This wasn't a popularity contest. It really was data-driven, and we ended up on this list out of 2,400 different places as number 37. So that's really a high honor as far as I'm concerned, and something we should really celebrate and be pretty proud of, because everybody in this room played a part in making that happen within our city, as well as so many people in our community. So just wanted to give you a highlight on that. If I can find more magazines are coming in on Thursday, they said, so maybe I can get a copy for all of you and to share in the celebration of something that has happened from all your hard work over the years to make our city a better place. Just wanted to say thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for throwing our city's party, Wooster Fest, which happens every year, and I can't think of a nicer event than what took place this year, and probably most of all because of the weather cooperated, and they were just 2 perfect days to have it. The city really works hard to help make Wooster Fest happen, and I don't know if the guys that are, no, they've already left, the guys that were here for the engineering section and the infrastructure section, Kurt Denning and all of the PPM guys, work really, really hard. In fact, if you were down there Saturday night and saw the party going on till 11 o'clock or so, and the thousands of people were there, and then went back down Sunday morning by, say, 10 o'clock, the place beautiful looked like nothing had happened there. So our crews worked really, really hard to help make that back into a city structure again. So thanks to everybody that did that, made the thing happen, especially the Chamber of Commerce for hosting it and putting it on. A couple of things I just want to note for you tonight. Ordinance 2017-29 and 2017-30 are the issues about changing our org chart with the assistant police chief and the HR coordinator positions being created. We've had this on your calendar now for over a month. You asked to have the issues separated, and that's what we've done. If you have any questions at all, please ask them tonight. We want to answer any questions that you might have, and we have people in the room. Jeanette Wagner is here, our HR manager, and she can answer any type of question you might have about the HR department, about how it works, about how we have piles of things that they have to do at this time of year, especially with the insurance sign-ups and those things, and having contracts coming up with both police and fire, and the work that goes into those. So if you've got questions, please ask them tonight. Also, Matt Fisher and Scott Rotolo here with the police department are here again to answer any questions you might have. Now, it is truly your will tonight if you pass them or not. But the sooner you say yay or nay to these two issues, the quicker we can carry on with doing the daily business around City Hall. And as I say, this time of year gets really hectic for us because I mentioned the insurance and the negotiations going on, but we also have budgets that we're putting together to present to you here in about a month's time. So in fact, actually a couple weeks' time, actually we'll be presenting it for the first. So any help that you can give us with that to hopefully get these passed this evening, if you choose to pass them, would be greatly appreciated. With that, I thank you for the time, and enjoy the pleasure of being one of the best places to live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to communications from public. I don't think there's any petitions. Mr. Green, you didn't put what you wanted to speak on.
No, but I will. If you let me speak. Listen to you, Mayor Brenneman, and council members. I've been here in past about sidewalks of the city of Worcester. City of Worcester is supposed to be number one. Well, it might be number one way of things, but I have something to say to you people on council and the mayor of Worcester. Your law ought to be changed. The property owners, they don't want to fix the sidewalks. They don't want to do them at all. I do not drive. I'm a citizen of this proud, foremost agricultural city of the state of Ohio. I will tell you this. I appreciate it if you take me seriously and have a law changed to make the residents fix their sidewalks. You have residents, I can take you to a place this evening, every one of you, and show you a place that's real dangerous in the city of Worcester. If you fell in the middle of the night, you break your arm and crack your head wide open, there should be a law change to make the residents fix their walks. They can fix their properties, and make their homes beautiful. Okay, but when it comes to anybody, they don't come, nobody else, and say anything about the walks at all. The walks are dangerous. It makes the city look bad. And I want you folks to take me seriously about the walks. They're dangerous. I wouldn't come and complain about anything hardly at all about the city of Worcester. But there's something badly wrong when they can't even try to fix their sidewalks at all. And I think somebody's been up there and it's been ignored by the residents to death. So I think it'd be better to make the law stricter in the city of Worcester, make them property owner fix their property. And one way or another, it's gonna have to be done, because I'll tell you, if you people don't think it's an eyesore to me in the city. I'm proud to live in Worcester, but I don't like to see a bunch of sidewalks that look horrible. Thank you for your time.
And if I could request, if you see sidewalks like that, would you write the address down and let
Well,
the...
I don't think I should be doing the city's job. I'm telling you where it is, that the thing is in a nutshell. I think the addresses somehow have been put to the city, but it's not ever has been anything done. I would appreciate if somebody taking interest on city council tonight that the walks need to be repaired. They're dangerous. Now, it can be ignored or one or the other. It's something that's going to have to be done.
If I may comment, yeah, what's really needed, and this would be part of anybody, any citizen of Worcester, government officials,
citizens alike. If you see sidewalks that are heaved up, that are a real danger, as Kevin is talking about, the city needs the street address. In other words, let's say it's Main Street, 89 Main Street. There's a house there that has a bunch of sidewalks, one heaved up, it's a danger. The city sends out a notice. It's the responsibility of the property owner to fix that sidewalk, and we have a program called 2575. The city picks up 25% of the cost, and the resident, the property owner, picks up 75%. This is on the books. This was passed years ago. So what the city needs, and I think we all live here, so we can all, maybe pull to the curb if we see a real bad one, or maybe we can catch the house number. Some of them are pretty available when you drive by. Other times you have to stop. But the city needs that address. 50 Market Street, 25 Pearl Street, whatever the address is, so that they can send out the necessary notice, give the property owner a certain amount of time to get it done. Oftentimes they can get, if there's a lot of them on the same street, they can get with their neighbors and have a contractor come in and save the money with the economies of scale. Because instead of fixing one sidewalk, they might fix several. But we do have the 2575 program on the books. Joel, would you like to, did I miss anything?
No, I mean, yeah, actually, our ordinance very clearly spells out conditions for sidewalk replacement. And it, even down to over an inch of differential in those, so it's very clear, and we have one of our engineering inspectors actually does do sidewalk inspections, but that's not all he does, so any help we can get would definitely.
But that address, that house number and that address, that street address is absolutely essential, because that gets the paperwork going. And again, remind me, what's the period of time we give the property owner?
We usually, it depends on the time of year. If it's like this time of the year, we wouldn't tell them you got to get it done in 2 months because they wouldn't be able to. So we'd give them time, and
30, 60 days, something like that?
Yeah, unless it's getting towards winter, and we wait till spring.
Right.
Usually we work together with a whole block of people, get economies of scale.
And if you have college kids working in the summer, sometimes that's what they're assigned to do, walking up and down the streets.
And we do a lot of sidewalk replacement repair every year.
So apparently you've seen some that
I've
need to
seen
be.
a lot of sidewalks. I'm not gonna do the city's job. They should be doing the walks. I will tell you, Mr. Brenneman, something's gonna have to be done. There's walks that's too dangerous in the city of Wooster. I appreciate your time.
All right, Mr. Clark, and is it Ms. Arzwega?
Yes.
Do you want to wait until we have the public hearing to speak on the alley vacation?
That'd be fun.
Okay.
I've waited this long.
Would you?
Can I ask a question about the sidewalk part?
Sure.
I didn't sign my name to the agenda, but I was wondering, it was within like 6 months to a year ago, that it was going around and fixing like a lot of sidewalks, and they were in disarray, and was that a grant that fixed them, or?
Where was this?
That might have been the
Oh,
walks
down
to
in South
schools.
End,
Oh.
I'm sticking my neck out, but.
Probably CDBG, we get grants, community development block grants.
Yeah, we
that
did
can only be
have
used
one
in certain
down
areas of the city where there's a certain
Henry Street.
percentage of low to moderate income.
Spruce Street.
Okay.
So every year we do,
Something
and
like
it's
Spruce
going around
Street.
in
Is it
spots.
East
and
Henry
fixing
to Spruce Street or something?
South Street, Henry Street.
Okay, because I'm wondering, I'm sticking my neck out, but I was wondering, because my entire frontage was replaced. And I was never billed, I just wondered if there were grants that covered what he's asking for.
Yeah, and then we have a thing called Safe Routes to Schools that we can get grant funding if we can prove that it's a risk for the children, and we've taken true advantage of this also. So in fact, we're working on another right now.
What originally started mine was there was a tree hooped up.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, if there was a tree in the tree line, that's a street tree, so
Yeah.
that's what we take care of. So if that causes the sidewalk
Right,
to heave, then the city takes care of that piece of sidewalk.
okay. Just one.
Good question.
My favorite subject.
You won't have to wait very, very long, because we're now back to committee reports and public hearings, but we'll have the public hearing first, so I'll turn it over to Ms. Knappich. And we'll have a public hearing on the vacation request of the alley that runs from Maiden Lane to Maple Street.
Yes, thank you very much. There has been a petition to vacate an alley from Maple Lane to, Maiden Lane to Maple Street. One of the questions, the issues would be if everyone is in agreement, all of the contiguous properties are in agreement with vacating that alleyway. And just for the public understanding, when an alleyway is vacated, then the homeowners, the property owners on each side, they gain that property to the middle line. So they would be gaining property that the city would be giving up. So I'll open that up for any comments from the public regarding this.
My only question is, when this is vacated, because, I mean, you guys obviously seen pictures last time that I brought, and it was really in bad disarray. Well, once I was thinking that it was gonna be closed, you know, like the following week, I literally cleaned up my area.
Yes.
My 10-foot, I cut up a log, it's firewood now, and all kinds of stuff. But I'm wondering, how obligated is everybody to actually get this cleaned up once this is vacated? Because on the one adjoining me from behind and sides is like, I mean, it's been pretty bad. Now, the one west, going west of me goes into the creek. And so, you know, that's only, you know, you can only go so far on that, but there's one directly behind me that is like, I mean, it's still in bad disarray, and, you know, and rodents are moving in, you know, and stuff like that, and I just don't want it to continue with that. I mean, will there be a letter sent out saying, you know, this has been vacated, and you're responsible, and you need to get this cleaned up, or?
Well, it's my understanding, as I said, when an alleyway is vacated, then the parties on either side of that alley gain that property as their own to the middle line. At that point, then those property owners are responsible for keeping that property up to code.
Okay.
If it's not up to code, then we can send a city inspector out, and they can cited, or usually they're given a certain amount of time to clean up the property. If they don't clean up the property, then they can be cited, they can be taken to court, they can be fined. But when the alleyway is vacated, then it does become that property owner's responsibility to keep that property up to our city codes.
Okay, and as fair warning, I'm gonna be a watchdog on that.
Excellent, we need neighborhood watchdogs. That's good. Was there anything else, Joel, that you would add? Okay.
Although it does offend my sensibilities, is the city has let it get that way.
I thought of that as
And
well.
you know what, I wanna thank the city on behalf of actually coming down during that last storm, when there was a tree come down in Shelton. There's actually a walnut tree in the middle of the alley that's like this. So that's how long that's been vacant.
Right.
You know,
Right, and we've seen
But
pictures.
there was actually a big limb came down and gently landed on my garage. And the city, I said something to them, and that evening or that afternoon, it was gone.
Well, I was just
I
saying,
cleaned it up, and I want to thank you guys. the rest.
I'm just saying that here it's been the city's responsibility to keep that maintained, so to speak, and now it's like, okay, we're gonna abdicate the alley, and now you, the property owner, have to clean it up. That kinda, to me, offends my sensibilities.
I understand that, but again, that was one of those pieces of property that I'm not really sure, I mean, it was essentially abandoned, though not legally abandoned,
Well, that's the
but it was
term.
abandoned
There's a
for,
lot that are abandoned, but not legally
legally
vacant.
abandoned for
Yeah,
for
and
decades.
I think under Ohio law, that despite it's been abandoned, I don't think as long as it's city property, you can use the 21 years of
Adverse possession.
adverse possession, because I
Yeah.
think there's a carve-out for the city. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying is, the city's let it get to that point, and now we're gonna say it's your responsible to clean it up. I think there ought to be, frankly, I think there ought to be some synergy between these people who are all of a sudden saddled with a cleanup effort that,
Maybe, Mr. Biden, since this is piercing your heart, you can come down and load my part in gravel and put in my driveway for, no.
Got your job.
One thing with bad
Good
weather
deed.
coming pretty soon, I'm sure that the city could wait until next year in the spring, give the folks a chance, if this is vacated tonight, give the folks a chance like yourself and your neighbors to, in the spring is usually a time when people clean up their yards and so on and so forth. So, rather than bring the hammer down on property owners, in a month or so, it's just, if it's vacated, then maybe city could kind of take a look at it and see what it looks like a year from now. And if people haven't done necessary cleanup, and then maybe they can get a letter of encouragement and see what happens with that.
Or maybe if
I
it's,
understand what you're saying.
or maybe if it's been down there and there are large things there, we might want to send somebody from our streets department or maintenance department to go down and take a look and maybe pick up some of the bigger pieces. Just a suggestion.
What would happen is if it gets vacated, we would notify them that it's been vacated. At that point, we probably wouldn't do anything unless somebody complained about that particular piece of property. At that point, we would go meet with the property owners and talk to them. It would be long down the process before they get any kind of violation.
You've got the watchdog.
Right.
Who appointed himself tonight. Great.
Any other comments?
is anyone here, I don't know, is
No, go ahead.
opposed?
Well, that was what I was asking. If there are any other comments, is there anyone here who is opposed to vacating this long vacated alleyway, though not legally vacated alleyway? If not, and if there are no other comments, I will close the public hearing.
Okay, we will consider having held and now close the public hearing on the alley vacation between Maiden Lane and Maple Street. And I'm going to ask Mr. Montgomery, did you find anything on in the ordinance?
The only thing I found in as far as the city's concerned is if not 100% sign the petition, then we're required to let people know and have a hearing. I found nothing in regards to 3 readings.
Okay.
And we just referred to Ohio Revised Code, and obviously it has nothing about readings, it's very generic. There's no public use, and you can decide to vacate it.
All right. And then I have 2 committee reports, one a Laws and Ordinance Committee report.
Yes, the Laws and Ordinance Committee did meet, and we talked about we met with Andrew Dutton and the consultants who are working with the city to update the zoning code. They have made quite a bit of progress, I'm happy to say, although it does not look like they will be finished by year's end, which was what I was hoping would happen. But in updating the zoning code, what we're doing, and I think they've made great progress in this from what I saw at the meeting, is that we're trying to streamline the code so that it's more understandable, that it's not redundant. We've got places in the code where things are repeated unnecessarily. We have places in the code that are outdated and not in compliance with the Ohio Revised Code. They are working toward putting all of the sections together that would, by common sense, and yes, sometimes there's common sense in government, that would by common sense belong together, so that when someone reads the zoning code, they can understand the process that you go through, and they understand what is required for each zoning section. From what I've seen with their work so far, it looks good. It is more understandable. It's more coherent, I think. Mr. Albright and Mr. Silvestri are on that committee, and they were also with me, and I'd encourage them to add anything that I would leave out. But it looks like they are doing a nice job of putting things in the right order, getting rid of things we don't need, making the language clearer, and I'm anxious to see the final product. I think it'll be a nice product. One of the things that was interesting is the fact that there were some people here from the RT district, and they are not making any changes at this point to the RT district, not suggesting any changes, and the folks there were worried about that, because one of the concerns there, of course, is the multi-resident dwellings that they have. The other thing is that we are keeping any current locations where there are manufactured homes, but or trailer parks, but eliminating provisions for future trailer parks or manufactured home parks. So there can be individual manufactured homes as long as they meet the requirements in a certain residential area where they plan to put that home. But as far as a park goes, there will no longer be an option for that in Worcester. So I think I've covered the high points. Was there anything else, Mr. Albright or Mr. Silvestri?
But I would just add that I think the reason that maybe the schedule that we would have liked to have to complete this process by the end of the year is not going to be realized, because the public input portion of the whole project of revising this will not, if we kept to the original schedule, they wouldn't have the time to poll the public and get the public involved. So that's the major reason, because you don't want to go through all this trouble and have these folks working hard like they're doing, and council deliberating as we will on the finished product, and not have a chance for the public to, take a look at least the final draft before it's actually voted upon. So I think that's the major reason for the, extending it at least a month or so into the next year.
Right, and we have had a focus group that's been working with the consultant and our city planner, Andrew Dutton, and they've been very active and given a lot of good input and feedback, which makes the suggestions and recommendations when they come to us better vetted by the time they get to us, and that's very helpful.
I would add just one thing too. John mentioned part of it. It's been very input driven, and it's been also very needs driven. So for example, just because we've had a certain designation in our code for so long doesn't mean it's there to stay. We're looking at it saying, do we really need this, or is it similar enough to this other designation where we combine, consolidate, make it more streamlined, make it easier for applicants, and even not only the details, but going high level, saying, what's the size of our boards and commissions, and do we need to look at and change even that? Those are big things, big issues. So it's high level all the way down to the minute details, and they're doing a good job.
They are, and I'm glad you raised the issue of looking at the number of people on the boards and commissions, because they've recommended changes that I think will help us be more efficient in the process before the boards and the commissions. And we're looking at making attendance requirements, and it feels somewhat harsh to say you're a volunteer, but we require you to attend X number of meetings. But the fact that these people are kind enough and civic-minded enough to volunteer, we really need their input, and we need them to be there. So I think putting in attendance requirements will also help move the processes when it comes to planning commission, when it comes to the zoning board of appeals. It will help make it more predictable, and it will make the process move faster. And hopefully it will make, not that we end up in court very often, we end up in court very, very little on these things, but we would like to keep it that way, and I think these changes will do that. And that's my report, our report.
Okay, well, thank you, Laws and Ordinances Committee. Then we had an infrastructure committee meeting just before council called by Mr. Albright, and we had Roger and Kurt's excellent paving adventure. So you want to give us a summary of that, Mr.
Oh, thank you.
Albright?
I have the outline in front of me. It was about an hour long, and I thought it was very informative. Kurt and Roger did an excellent job. They had a PowerPoint presentation, and I could see the newspaper reporter afterwards. Did you get copies of everything? Outline and everything? Good. First thing they talked about was an overview of the 2017 road improvement projects. Things like roadway construction, ODOT, large city funds. Roger explained the difference and tried to tell us about what streets are eligible for ODOT large city funds. Roughly about $400,000 we get per year from ODOT to do those kind of streets, while residential streets are not a part of that plan. Then we went to capital improvement funds. What we use our capital improvement funds, thanks to the folks granting us a 0.5% increase in the income tax, because you reminded us that years 2011 and 12, there was hardly any money to do any major improvements, in fact, even minor improvements. So the streets were kind of let loose, and now we're paying the price and trying to catch up. And Roger and Kurt are doing a great job trying to do that. So we went over the list of streets that we can't use the large group or the large city funds from ODOT, but we can certainly use our city streets. And by the way, we joined with ODOT from the large city funds to do about 50-50. The ODOT 400,000 and capital funds from the city of Wooster 400,000. Next, we talked about the city crews. What does Kurt and his crew do? Because most of the other things are bid out. And Kurt talked about the streets that they have paved, had a list of them in 2017. Also, where the city crews overlay and do repairs, maybe not the whole street, but part of the street. These are usually streets of 1,000 feet or less. Even alleys, there was a time, a long period of time when there was not much attention at all paid to alleys, because they were down at the bottom of the list, you might say, and the monies had run out. And we have been much more aggressive in our attention paid to repairing alleys that tend to dish out in the middle and straighten and level them out. And finally, pothole. And I thought what was really interesting about the potholes is, and Roger talked about this, but in 2015 there were 12,500 potholes fixed. 2016, 6,500. 2017, 3,500. And the first thing you think was, well, why aren't you out there filling potholes? Well, that's actually a good thing, because as the pothole filling has reduced, that means that there's more actual road paving the roads or reconstructing them, and there are fewer potholes to fix. So that's a good sign with the number of potholes going down. Next, he talked about major 2017 projects, that is Roger. And then we got into the wish list. Proposed 2018 pavement resurfacing projects. First was asphalt resurfacing, again with the ODOT large city funds, and second, the capital improvement funds, those streets that are lesser streets, sometimes they're connectors, and also we get into the strictly residential, concrete repairs and miscellaneous projects. There was also, Kurt had his wish list, asphalt resurfacing and chip and seal some alleys. But we don't do much of chip and seal, and I thought the comment was that these were mainly streets that get a lot of truck traffic, There were about 3 of them that were listed, and the thought there is to keep them in good shape so that they don't have to be completely redone. Methodology, he explained the difference between the ODOT large city funds and city improvement. The pavement condition rating, remember some years ago, council approved to bring in an outside agency to take a look at all our streets and use a lot of different factors to come up with a listing of the streets from the worst to the best. And, you know, the ones at the top are not up there number 1 because they're in good shape, they're some of the worst. And he reviewed some of those factors and criteria that went into it. And then he mentioned something else, that sometimes, yes, you have the streets on a list, but there might be one down at, you know, say the second grouping that, you know, is in worse shape than some of the ones that are above, but the amount of traffic, you know, vehicular traffic and so on, is the reason why they're so far down. Well, maybe with Kurt and his repairs, he can go in and maybe do something to improve that, especially with a street that's less than 1,000 feet long. So there are other priorities that can maybe adjust. And he mentioned the word that the pavement condition rating is kind of a flux. It's in flux constantly because as roads are improved, then of course they fall or drop down on the list, which they should. And there's other things like economics. So for instance, if there's a major company on a street where hundreds of thousands of people travel to and from work, that might jack up that street higher on the rating sheet than you might think. And finally, we went over other infrastructure issues like water pipes, sewer pipes, and the fact that they're constantly new methods of checking on the condition rather than just waiting for breaks, and that a lot of our pipes are many years old, 30 years old, a certain percentage of them, so they're constantly looking. We have a better technology today available to the city to check on water leaks, for instance, and even sanitary sewer leaks. So his wish list was in the millions, but of course we have to be realistic and know that we can't get it all done. But even though the nation might get a D+ grade, that's what a lot of the material magazines and statistics indicate. I kind of closed out the meeting by saying that certainly our city gets a much higher grade, and I really take my hat off to the folks in the maintenance department, the engineering department, because they work hard, and if all you have to do is travel around this part of the state or other parts of the state to communities our size or even smaller, and realize that we've done our city's staff has done a great job, and of course they can always do more, but of course it costs money, and it's our job, I guess, as council to decide how the money is spent in terms of priorities, and the administration brings us a budget that we approve or maybe we can alter. But I'm really pleased with the results of the meeting and all the great information that we received. And if you need any of the materials that were handed out, I'm sure that Roger or Kerr or both can make those materials available to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albright, and thank Roger Kobelarsek, city engineer, and Kurt Denning, who's head of the maintenance department, for giving a very thorough explanation and nice PowerPoint, and I appreciate Mr. Albright having the committee meeting. And it tugged at my heartstrings to hear you say this is probably my last infrastructure committee meeting. So anyways, that brings us to old business, which there is none, and that is new business, which is the first reading of resolution number 2017-42. It'll be presented by Mr. Sanders, and if my agenda is correct, it's a budgeted item, so it will not require suspension of the rules to pass this evening. Before I get to you, Mr. Sanders, I'll have our clerk of council, if she would, please read the title.
Resolution number 2017-42, a resolution authorizing the expenditure of additional funds to a single vendor for utility division supplies.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Every year, the folks down at the utility division present a budget in terms of what they believe they're going to need for equipment, supplies, for the work that they're going to do. We know that there's scheduled maintenance things that they have. We also know that there's things that, parts that break and that need replaced. And what we have before us this evening is a continuation of the purchasing. They've already exceeded the $50,000. Actually, they're going to exceed the $50,000 in terms of purchasing additional materials for the utilities division, water line supplies, fittings, clamps, hydrants. And so at this point, that's what this request is for, to allow them to continue to make those purchases. With that, I'll open the floor up for any questions.
I don't think there's any conspiracies in the buying.
It's pretty straightforward.
Things we need to continue operating here.
With that, I would motion to adopt Resolution 2017-42.
Second.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Sanders, second by Mr. Ansel. Would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Knappich,
Yes.
Myers, Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Albright.
Yes.
Resolution number 2017-42 passes. We'll turn our attention to ordinance number 2017-29. It's slated for 3 readings. It will be presented by Ms. Knappich. Before I get to you, Ms. Knappich, I'll ask kindly to have Mr. Paulo read the title.
Ordinance number 2017-29, an ordinance amending Chapter 162, Management Benefits of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Wooster, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
And before I turn it over to you, I wish our law director was here, but I understand she was under the weather and was sent home by Mr. Paulo, who seems to be cracking the whip for all of us. I do note that section 2.12, actions not permitted as emergencies, specifically state no action of council authorizing and establishing new positions classified and unclassified shall be enacted as an emergency ordinance.
So, that means that despite the mayor's wish that we pass this and the next ordinance as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and the language needs to be changed. We can't include in the title and declaring an emergency.
Right.
I just point that out. This is as you know, the curse of being an attorney. Sometimes you read the
Getting those details.
statutes and ordinances.
So, in
Could I
order
ask
for,
a question on that, please? Hey, there's a difference between an emergency piece of legislation that gets enacted immediately upon the signing of council and the mayor. But there's a difference between that and suspending the rules and going to 3 readings. So that you could suspend the rules and go to the 3rd and final reading,
Okay.
which lets us know the intent, but it could not be done within that 30-day period that it has to sit and wait because it wasn't an emergency piece of legislation. So it would still give us the direction of council and let us move forward with what we need to do to put things in place, but it couldn't go into effect for 30 days because it's not an emergency piece of legislation. Am I correct in that?
Well, Ms. Applebaum and I had that discussion, and I wanted her to refresh my recollection. I do know you can't use emergency language in the title.
Right, and there is no emergency language in this.
there is in
I'm
the
sorry,
title.
in the title.
In both titles.
But it's not stated back in
Just
the
says earliest-
sections.
Earliest
Right.
period allowed by law.
So technically, you could cross out and declaring an emergency because it's not being passed as an emergency legislation.
Actually, I think we could do that. Can we do that?
Well,
Can we, if we wish to pass this tonight, because we've discussed this quite a bit, and I think we all understand what's happening with this particular ordinance, it just comes up as a first reading because there was the request to separate the two different issues, the HR issue and the police issue. So if we, or if I, move to amend, removing the language from the title and declaring an emergency, and assuming that passes, can we still vote on this, suspend the rules and vote on this evening?
I think you can, but we can't have that. By having that in emergency, it's then not subject to challenge or referendum. So I think that's what 2.12 is addressing. There are certain issues that must be available to anyone challenging an ordinance or resolution. It just can't be passed as an emergency. And there's a differentiation between suspension of the rules and an emergency measure.
Well, in that case, I would move to remove the language from the title and declaring an emergency.
So,
Because there's no emergency language anywhere else
I
in the
know.
ordinance.
yeah, so,
So it wouldn't
but I
take,
think, yeah, you have to move to amend the title to read without that language.
right, and that's what I just did. I moved to
Okay.
amend the title to remove the language and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Okay, motion to amend the title is second by Mr. Silvestri. Any discussion? Now we're getting into the mundane stuff, but,
Darn lawyers.
would you please call the roll on the motion to amend the title?
Cavan,
Yes.
Knappich,
Yes.
Myers, Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Albright,
Yes.
Ansel.
Yes.
So now ordinance number 2017-29 will read the same except for having the declaring an emergency portion removed.
I would move to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend the rules by Ms. Knappich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sanders. Would you call the roll on the motion to suspend the rules?
Cavan,
Yes.
Knappich,
Yes.
Myers, Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Albright,
Yes.
Ansel.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended.
Move to adopt the amended ordinance number 2017-29.
Okay, motion to adopt ordinance number 2017-29 as amended. Any further discussion, questions? Seeing none, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Did anybody second it?
Yeah, Craig did.
Yeah,
Craig did?
Craig
Yeah.
seconded.
Oh, okay.
trying to trip me up on a Monday.
Yeah, I'm just back from vacation, remember?
Yeah, don't rub it in. Some of us didn't get a vacation last week, Mr. Paulo.
Cavan,
Yes.
Knappich,
Yes.
Myers, Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Albright,
Yes.
Ansel.
Yes.
Ordinance number 2017-29 passes. And I was looking for that Carolina barbecue, but apparently. no.
I ate it all before.
You
I got home.
probably ate it on the road trip back, right? That brings us to ordinance number 2017-30. I think we have the same issue with the declaring an emergency portion, but I will ask you to please read the title as it is presented, and we'll go from there.
Ordinance number 2017-30, an ordinance amending chapter 162, management benefits of the codified ordinances of the city of Wooster, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Knappich, the floor is yours.
Yes, the first thing I would like to do is I would like to amend this ordinance to remove the language "and declaring an emergency."
Motion by Ms. Knappich to amend ordinance number 2017-30 by removing and declaring an emergency from the title.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ansel. Would you please call the roll on the motion to amend the title?
Knappich,
Yes.
Myers, Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Albright,
Yes.
Ansel.
Yes.
Capman.
Yes. The ordinance number 2017-30 is amended. Ms. Knappich.
Now I have a procedural question. We had discussed this previously, and I don't know if I want to suspend the rules and call for a vote on this evening, but I would like to have some discussion on that. Can we still do that if I don't move to suspend the rules?
Good question. How does council feel? Because the part of the section of the charter says we can adopt our own rules, so this might be
One
an
of those
instance where
times.
we adopt our own rules. Mr. Silvestri?
I guess I do have a few questions, and I'm glad Ms. Wagner's here this evening, but
But first we have to decide if we can to have discussion. We have to get the
Okay.
procedural thing.
I would be open to that.
As I. Right.
I would too.
I got a consensus that,
Great. And as Mr. Silvestri said, Ms. Wagner is here tonight, and she's been here in the past, but I think that there have been some questions raised regarding the need for this additional human resources coordinator, as well as the financing for this particular position, and what this person will be doing, how much, there's a question of how much they would be doing for WorkCog, if there'll be any additional expense to the city, but I will let Mr. Silvestri go ahead first and ask his questions.
So I guess, just as a matter of principle, I guess I was thinking about our human resources within the city, and I know I've looked at charts that have shown that we have tightened up the number of employees employed by the city of Worcester, and I'm glad that even after the taxpayers made the decision to increase the tax rate because we showed a need, you know, and we have a new safety service center, and we just saw a presentation tonight about the fact that strategically over the last 3 years, the number of potholes has really been cut in half, you know, cut in half 2 years ago and half again last year. So we're heading in a good direction. We're being made whole again. I guess I just, I want to ask the question, you know, where is this workload coming from? And I know maybe we've talked a little bit about it in the past, but how much of it is WorkCog? And I guess out of a matter of principle, I thought to myself, you know, should the WorkCog bear that burden, and what should we be stuck with? So on the one side, where's the burden coming from? Because we have held tight with the number of employees, and then the other side, how much is WorkCog and how much should we bear?
I'll start. Jeanette can fill you in on details of stuff. I mean, really, I don't, we traditionally had at least four people down in our HR department. Only during the voluntary separation did we go below that. And so we have had 2 people down there for quite a while, and a part-time person that we were keeping busy all the time. So there's more work down there, just Worcester work, for 2 full-time and a part-time person, a limited part-time person. So we have added a few people. We're still well below what we were before the recession. It's just more work than 2 people can do right now. There has been some support we have been providing for the Work Hog, and the Work Hog is paying us for that. So there's really no cost to the city because we already had 2 full-time and a part-time. Basically, we're asking to go part-time to full-time for that one position. That position used to exist in our ordinances. I don't know why, back during when we did our voluntary attrition, for some reason we eliminated that position, and I don't know why. If we would have just left it there and left it unfilled, we wouldn't be sitting here today. And you wouldn't have seen a difference in the budget that was brought before you. But because of that, we have to add that position back in, an HR coordinator at this point. And Jeanette can fill you in on the type of stuff, but it's your typical, payroll and disciplinary action and union negotiations and insurance, open enrollment and workers' comp reporting, and all of those things. And it's 100 of those things. It just takes up a lot of time to do. And the Work Hog is very small right now. It doesn't really justify having a full-time HR person up there. Maybe if it continues to grow, that would make sense. But right now, to recreate and duplicate processes and systems and things like that just doesn't make sense. It's much cheaper just to provide some support. It's cheaper for us. If they were to hire someone and then we were to pay for that, we'd be paying more. So at this point, that's by far the cheapest option, and all of our partners are helping in that support. But that's just a little piece of why we're asking for the position.
And because I know this has been one of the sticking points, particularly for Mr. Meyer, which I'm sorry he's not here this evening. But Jeanette, can you tell us what duties we do supply for Work Hog?
We currently supply all of the HR support for the Work Hog, and there's a little bit of a dynamic that makes it more than just we're adding, supporting the same types of functions for the city, but the Work Hog is actually considered a small employer. They are a separate entity. As you all are aware, they have a separate tax ID. And because of that and because of their size, a lot of the services that we're providing are not just a duplicate for the city, but we've had to create new processes. Their insurance is completely different than what the city is offered because they're a small group. And for those of you that are lawyers or have any knowledge regarding health care and Affordable Care Act and those types of things, that creates a lot of extra work. We've had to create a lot of new policies and those types of things. So we've been providing that type of support, as well as doing some training and development in the department. Because they are small, they don't have those resources, so we've been providing that. A lot of employee relations, just with hiring, and also assisting with disciplinary actions and those types of things. We're also assisting with their payroll. Our finance department supports the payroll and the finance side of all of those functions that happen in the Work Hog, so we are assisting with that as well, and working with our finance department to help with that process, as well as their insurance and then also legal compliance. So they have a lot of different legal guidelines they have to follow because of their size that are not similar to the city of Wooster. So we've had to spend some time researching that and making sure that they're following all of the legal requirements.
Now, with respect to all of those duties that we supply to Work Hog, what percentage of an HR person's time would be devoted to those responsibilities?
Well, the adding of the staff is not going to be, that staff person is not dedicated to the COG because of the higher level of function that's needed. Myself and the HR specialist are going to continue to provide most of the support to the Work Hog. So the administrative piece is what the part-time person would be helping us with, and that is a combination of WorkHog and the city of Worcester, more city than WorkHog. Right now, we've been tracking, for about a little over a year, we've been tracking the hours that we support to the COG.
Excellent.
And we provide an average about 20 hours a week of HR support, which is the reason why we have requested the permanent full-time position. We had a part-time person in the HR department providing that administrative support for a couple of years. And we've struggled to try to keep a part-time person in that role because obviously it doesn't offer insurance. You have to find someone that's, willing to be in that role on a part-time basis. And so we were using about 12 hours a week was the amount we were getting from a part-time person. We really had more work just to support the city than that. So that is where we came up with, the option of a full-time person, because if I had about 24 hours a week before the WorkHog, I probably still would keep that person very busy, and then with the WorkHog averaging about 20 hours a week is the reason that we have come to you and asked for the option of a full-time person. I am still continuing to recruit for a part-time person. I believe that if we can to get the work done with the part-time and 2 full-time, we should do that for as long as we can, but it's obviously getting to the point where that's becoming difficult to keep filled and to keep up with the workload.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because I know Mr. Meyer would ask this, and I'm curious as well. If you did not have the WorkHog responsibilities, would you need the additional full-time person?
I would need a part-time person, but not a complete full-time person. So there is a little bit of excess of hours because of the WorkHog work, but I could easily keep a part-time person working 24 hours a week busy without the WorkHog.
Now, let me turn my questioning, if you don't mind, to Mr. Dordia on the financial end of things. What does the city of Worcester get from WorkHog to support the resources that we're devoting?
$71,640 per year, or $5,970 per month.
And other than the HR functions that we supply, what other functions do we supply?
There's obviously finance with AP, payroll, there's IT support, there's Linda with legal support, HR.
We don't,
Obviously children my time, but we don't.
yeah, it's just part of the job.
Right, we just other duties as assigned.
Other duties is assigned, I understand. That's a great HR catch-all. And how much of that would you say would be devoted to the HR aspect of it?
Well, we actually have that number, 20 hours. How about?
Probably half of it.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable, half of that, about 5,000 a month, or I'm sorry, 5,000 a month.
And as we, assuming and hopefully add more members to WorkHog, then I'm assuming that we will get more resources if we continue to provide these services to the WorkHog, that we will then get other partners to pay into the fund that will support these resources, and that will support the resources that we're providing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So our WorkHog president.
The COG was always intended to be a standalone entity. The more we got into it, we realized that it was too small to efficiently be a standalone. And because of what Jeanette explained about how it had to operate as a small business, we perform those kind of functions within our own organization. And so because it was located here in town, and we talked internally in the COG meetings about, okay, could we spread HR services around? So, 3 months Wooster did it, and 3 months Ashland did it, and 3 months Orville did it. And we shook our heads just like you are and saying, no, that's craziness. It would just be such a mess to try to figure that out. So we came to an agreement as a work hog board of the 3 cities and said, the city of Worcester provided those services for probably the first 2 months, and these guys looked at me and said, we can't keep doing this. You know, this is killing us. We're devoting a lot more time than we realized we were going to be devoting, and we have to talk to the other partners in the work hog. And so after about 2 months, we had gleaned the amount of time that IT and HR and finance and law were all putting into it, and crunched the numbers. Joel had a mile-long spreadsheet that has it all put together and figured out an appropriate amount. And Andre said it's about $71,000 a year is what those services are being charged out. And we're paying our proportionate share just like in all other work hog costs. So, but now we are being compensated and have been for the last, 3 months?
We started 7/1, July 1.
So I commend you for not doing the 3 months, 3 months, 3 months. That would just drive an HR person insane.
Absolutely.
That is a terrible idea. I like the idea of keeping it in one place. As Jeanette said, at some point in time as this grows, they'll have their own HR person, own finance, IT. So essentially what we're doing here is we're having that to some degree, but we're housing it here in the city of Worcester, but all of the partners for the work hog are paying.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
I understand.
The other thing is proximity too. The dispatch center is located here. in the city.
Right, and that does make the most sense. One of the questions I was going to ask was, well, why not Ashland? But the proximity of the work hog center here makes much more sense for us to have the resources here.
And just to reiterate, the main reason for the request to recreate this position is our own needs. You know, we're to that point where we're bumping beyond 2 full-time and 1 part-time can just handle City of Worcester needs. So the work hog just pushes us over that edge.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more. There was some discussion earlier, or some mention by the mayor about upcoming labor negotiations and other things that will require, I'm assuming, Jeanette's time, and that her duties then will be pushed down to other people. What do we have coming up that's going to require additional time for the city from our HR department?
Well, we've just started 3 negotiations, union negotiations, 2 in the police and 1 in the fire, and the dispatchers just organized, so we will be starting from scratch creating that entire contract for the dispatchers here, starting any day now as soon as we get notification from the state. And then we have all the insurance and open enrollment that's going on for both the city and the work hog right now.
Makes sense.
And we have next year's budget to get in place, to present to you here.
Just one small thing.
Yeah. So it's a little crazy around here, and that's why we'd sort of like to move this forward if possible.
Sure.
Did we mention that We Made Money magazine, 47th best? Sorry.
Yes. I would just say, as a member of the Work Hog, I've sat through the meetings as well. Startup was, most of it was done by Wooster. We do have buy-in now from the other entities, but folks, the thing to remember is end game. What are we getting here? We're getting a world-class dispatch center that we didn't have before. And we're talking about maybe adding a part-time person to the end of that. It's crazy worth it. We have to do it. I'm in full support.
Mr. Ansel?
I would just like to highlight, it sounds like the $71,000 is a considerable value to the Work Hog. I'm talking about the functional support that you've just highlighted. That's the first that we've heard of council in terms of the monthly allocated expense and the annual expense. And you know, it is a small standalone business, and I would caution city administration to keep a close summary of continued expansion of support services and the cost associated in terms of the WRCOG's reimbursement to the city to provide those services. It's a WRCOG problem that the city is supporting and working through, but we're out of the startup phase, and now we're adding an additional component of complexity dealing with a new labor union, and that can be a daunting and ominous task. It's disheartening that that occurred, because it just adds complexity to the streamlined functionality of the WRCOG or any organization. And perhaps based on that component and that new element that we're dealing with in the WRCOG, that be contracted out to a labor liaison, not maybe necessarily an attorney, but someone accredited and skilled in National Labor Relation Board practices and procedures, and has similar types of contract understanding, and not burden the city with that emotionalism, potential emotionalism, dealing with a new contract. You don't even have the core contract draft at this point in time. That's a considerable undertaking. So, and I don't know if Jeanette has strong experience or her staff has strong experience with those type of functions within a organized, who, as an example, is the representing union.
OPVA.
Okay.
Same one we already deal with.
Okay, so it is the same one. Okay. Just a thought and consideration, that reimbursement criterion, because to our understanding, we're paying a considerable contribution to the WRCOG as a major anchor in that initiative, and we're receiving some funding back, but when you look at the net, it's not a very significant expense for the value and the services that we are providing to the WRCOG, it sounds like. But that's something that the administration certainly has to deal with, the staffing element. We're only responsible for the financial support and endorsement of the WRCOG, and not necessarily the staffing issues.
Well, like Jeanette said, the high-level stuff we're still providing, so this position would be mostly Wooster related.
Yes.
Do we have a method to track how many hours each of our departments are?
Yeah, yep. I keep track every month, and, well, more than that, but definitely document every month and then report back to the WRCOG on a quarterly basis.
The documentation process is in place, that's the key.
And it's a two-way street, because we have to justify how much work, time, and expense we're putting into it, so that when you guys ask the questions, or our public asks the questions, we can say, yes, we are being compensated fairly. But we also have the cities of Ashland and Norville saying, wait a minute, how do you justify these costs of $71,000 a year? And so we have to justify that expense to them also. So
To the other partners in the WRCOG.
Yes, exactly.
Because I know we did a lot of the heavy lifting. Is that 71,000 even remotely close to the number of hours that are devoted? I mean, 20 hours a week out of our...
Yeah, I mean, that's how we did, that's how we calculated it. We went down to hours, type of, the position, wages, benefits, everything, so that we took all that into account.
Did we tell you that Joel loves
It would probably
spreadsheets?
behoove the administration to maybe provide some of that info to the city council for their review, since budgets are coming up.
Well, consideration also, and your point was good, Bob, is the fact that the other cities, the other partners in the WRCOG have the soft cost in terms of the governance through the board representation on the WRCOG, of which Wooster is a more of a controlling partner than the other entities. I mean, the Wooster and Ashland are the two largest, and then the other ones are smaller. But that's just time as a board directed to oversight and management functions. So certainly recognize that that wasn't part of the reimbursement calculation. It's the tactical, like Andre said, the AP, the AR, the labor relations now, the HR, the benefit structures and plan, and any legal advice provided by Linda and her group. So, understood.
If I could say one thing, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention, though, that there is collaboration between the law directors. I know that Ashland, between the law directors of Orville and Ashland and Wooster, also, I know that I believe the Ashland HR person has also been involved in some, in Orville's as well. So we're not carrying the full brunt of it, but let's say a majority.
But they're not a free rider. They're involved and engaged and part of the process, so noted. And the labor negotiation issue, it's just a part of the process in type of municipal organizations or safety service functions. So we get that, and that was certainly potentially anticipated, and it's become a reality. It just complicates things a little bit.
It does.
And I
Yes.
get it. I guess the other thing, we haven't heard, maybe I didn't read the fine print, the estimated cost of this new position.
Well, you had that identified in the voluntary separation program when we identified that position that we were going to eliminate temporarily, what the salary range, mid, and max in terms of the classification for the HR coordinator. What is that approximately, the mid, and max?
The min is 33.3, and the max is 61.2.
And is that just salary, or does that include benefits?
That just includes
And
salary.
with-
I believe Andre
Yeah, that's
has
salary.
benefits.
I calculated at the mid because obviously we don't know what's
45?
47.3 would be the mid. I just used that as a hypothetical. 10,200 would be for benefits. And then assuming it was family coverage, okay, the all-in rate would be 18 on top of that. So that would be 75, 691.
And that's full-time?
Correct.
We're already paying
We're already
close to
paying
30 for
a
part-time.
part-timer, right, so the incremental cost on that would be, the difference, which would be
The
about
benefits.
46,000.
Right.
And we're getting 71.
The
So the
71
delta
spread
is
out
actually
among
Yeah,
many
but
pretty
71,
positions.
yeah, spread
Spread out
out.
among many positions. But as
Right.
you did say, a lot of this work for this new person will be the city work, which is necessary regardless of WorkHog.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? At this point, because I had unfortunately missed that Mr. Meyer was not going to be here today, he had wanted me to call a meeting. I think we have hashed out things very thoroughly at this point here. What I would like to do is have the city get the spreadsheets and information to city council, particularly Mr. Meyer, who was concerned about the WorkHog costs and the implications. And I will strongly encourage that he, which I'm sure he will do, watch the video of tonight's meeting, which essentially, I think, hashed out everything he had questions about. And then if he has further questions, come to the city and ask the city those questions and have those answered to his satisfaction. And then at the next meeting, I do intend to suspend the rules and call for a full vote on this issue.
I will note that he will have wonderful video and audio transmission in his rebroadcast.
Absolutely. It will be great.
Yeah, after tonight's voting, there's no need to have a special.
No.
I would say there's no
Committee meeting.
there's no need to have a special committee meeting. It would be redundant. We would just be going over the same things that we went over this evening. Again, I'm sure Mr. Meyer, who unfortunately was not able to be here tonight, will get the thorough vetting through the videotape, and then can come to the city before the next meeting and ask any other questions that we may not have thought of to ask, or that would remain unanswered. But as I said, I plan to call this for a third and final vote at their next meeting.
All right, we will consider ordinance 2017-30 as having its first reading. Brings us to the final piece of legislation, ordinance number 2017-31, dealing with the alley vacation. Did you do the other public hearing on this alley vacation?
Yeah, sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
We have
see-
two of them.
Yeah, I know, but I see Mr. Albright sponsoring the legislation. That's where I'm now confused. Usually the chairman of the committee that's sponsoring the legislation.
I thought it was a little odd as well, but
So-
Mr. Albright and I work well together, so.
Share the work.
I was just going off of my prior memory that you held a public hearing, and then all of a sudden I see. So, do you guys,
Actually,
Mine?
Ms. DiPaolo was on vacation when we put this together, and Amy Hamilton sort of pinched hit, and so.
yeah,
that
I know,
was
and
probably how that
I was just trying to see if I had somehow missed the boat, because I clearly remembered you holding a public hearing previously, and I didn't want to insult when I looked down and saw Mr. Albright's name as sponsor, it's like, well, I didn't want him to be insulted, so since you held the public hearing, do you have any opposition to let Mr. Albright present the legislation?
Absolutely none.
Okay.
Absolutely none.
Is that all right with you, Mr. Albright? Because I know your time is short, because this might be the last alley vacation that you sponsor.
Long list.
If you would, Mr. Paul, will you read the title of ordinance number 2017-31?
Ordinance number 2017-31, an ordinance vacating unnamed east-west alley in the city of Worcester between Maiden Lane and Maple Street and declaring an emergency.
And I turn to the Dean of Council, Mr. Albright, would you please take it away?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we thought we had this passed a month or so ago, and we discovered that it was not publicly advertised for 6 weeks, I believe. That was the necessity. So that, along with, I was going to say something to her, Ms. Barb Quinteros, who's the owner of properties 1015 and 1014. She was not, her name wasn't on the original petition as signing and giving her okay for this vacation. And so she was here tonight, and Barb conducted the hearing and asked if anybody objected. So I assume that because Mr. Clark came with Ms. Quinteros, she has approved. She had her opportunity certainly to disapprove, and it's been advertised for 6 weeks or more. So I think we all saw the pictures. It's a wonder it was an alley ever. The creek running.
May I interrupt? I think that was her daughter that was here.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So her daughter was here and representing her, so that's the key. She was here, she wasn't here the last time. It's gotten its 6 weeks requirement for it to be out in the public, and I think we're ready to vote on it. And we certainly know that it doesn't begin to look like an alley, and thanks to Mr. Clark, we've discussed during the public hearing the maintenance of this when it becomes a part of people's adjacent properties. So I move to suspend the rules of council and put this on third and final reading.
Motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Albright. Is there a second?
Second. Go ahead.
Second, Mr.
Mr.
Cavan. Would you please call the roll on the motion to suspend the rules?
Myers, Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Albright,
Yes.
Hansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Knapp.
Yes.
Rules are suspended. Mr. Albright?
I move for adoption.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Albright. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Knapp.
I will open it up to any questions or comments from my fellow council people.
Well, I walked that alley with John. Well, we didn't walk it, we looked at it, there's no way he was gonna walk it.
No.
Unless we were Daniel boomed out. But it was pretty gnarly, and we were kind of surprised to find out that it was city-owned. Remember, there was a log laying across it, it was a big log. So,
A lot of
And a
water.
creek.
yeah, and
And
a
a
creek,
creek.
yeah. No bears, but,
That you were aware of.
yeah.
Could
He
be.
might have been watching you.
Well, I would just ask the administration to remember not to act too harshly on property owners who are really not getting much of a gift if it
Have to clean it up.
requires that much cleanup. So maybe there will be some synergy between property owners and the city. And I look for some monies carved out in the budget for possibly property cleanup. Anyways, that's my take on it. Anything else? Seeing none, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt?
Myers, Sanders,
Yes.
Silvestri,
Yes.
Albright,
Yes.
Ansel,
Yes.
Cavan,
Yes.
Knappich.
Yes.
Ordinance number 2017-31 in its reincarnation passes again. That brings us to miscellaneous. Let's start with Mr. Sanders.
Nothing to add, Mr. President.
Mr. Silvestri.
Yes, I want to thank Mr. Albright for calling that committee meeting before the council meeting. I want to thank Kurt Denning and also Roger Kovalarczyk for attending. I thought it was great to see a couple of the engineers, John Rice and Josie Hughes also, who was responsible, well, John Rice being the engineer and Josie Hughes being responsible for a lot of the paving. I don't know about you, but I thought about our paving crews some of those super hot days, not just a week or so ago, but throughout the intense days of summer. And they continue to work, they continue to patch and repave. And I just want to thank them for all their efforts. I know we had some good discussion on Gashi Street the last time I was down there. I thought the same thing, that this should be considered and we should consider moving it up the list. So I hope that some of those residents out there hear this, tune in, and get this louder audio that we've been enjoying these last few months. And I hope that they see it as an improvement to their property and something that they'll get the value back out should they sell the property in the future. So I think it really is a safety issue, and I'm glad to see that all the projects slated for 2018. Highland Park, number 4, had a lot of feedback on that one, and been shocked that the PCI index was not higher up till now. But I'm glad that we're getting there, and it's on the docket for 2018. So thanks to the city for all the work that you're doing in preparing the budget. We'll thank you early for you putting it in front of us. I know there's a lot of hours that go into that. So all of that goes to making Wooster the 37th best place in the U.S., best city in the U.S. in which to live.
I still think it's the best city.
I agree.
I'm biased. Mr. Albright.
Well, it was a pleasure to work with Roger and Kurt, and I thought they did a marvelous job. And I really am glad that Gashi Street was brought up. I certainly agree with Mr. Silvestri, and I do hope that citizens kind of come to our support, and maybe this can be put on the calendar for future years and not wait too much longer, because it is a major north-south street. And the bottom line is safety. It's not that we enjoy property owners spending money, but this together as a community, it's one of our responsibilities, one of our serious responsibilities is to be concerned about safety factors, and that's basically what we're talking about. I really enjoyed chairing this committee meeting tonight. Thank you.
You did a wonderful job.
Thanks.
Mr. Anson.
Yes, I too acknowledge the pride and the dedication of the street maintenance crews and the engineers and their hard work and contributions and the catch-up work that they've done with falling behind as we did But they've got tremendous momentum, and it starts at the top and all the way down to everyone involved in the process. Again, very proud of their contributions and dedication, and congratulations, Wooster being #1 in the state of Ohio in terms of America's best cities and 37 nationally. That's a remarkable accomplishment too, and it is a testimonial to everyone's spirit of collaboration and vision within the city of Wooster. So great job to City Council for adding and assisting in that process. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Cavan?
Yes, I would like to schedule a safety committee meeting, either October 16th or November 6th, whichever, if administration needs that much time. I would like to have a discussion about homeowners and landlords allowing or knowingly allowing drug use and trafficking in the city on their properties. I would welcome information from the law director, police department, and administration on this very important issue. There have been many concerns by our citizenry, looking for some reports and input and guidance. So I would entertain October 16th or November 6th. Maybe before City Council, 6:30-ish.
6:30.
Mr. Ansel, are you planning on holding finance committee reviews of the budget as you have in the past? Because that'll start playing out in November. So,
We did not have that committee meeting on the 16th. It would probably be the 6th.
The November 20th will be, the legislation will be introduced, the budget, November 20th, that's the third Monday.
Then do you want to have the Finance Committee meeting either the 6th or the 20th to give us the overview that we can prep prior to the first reading?
20th is fine.
Okay, we'll just do it.
Okay, the
Six-
16th
Let's do it
would
at
be-
6 o'clock though on the 20th.
Want to say 6 o'clock?
Yes.
On
Give us an hour and a
16th.
half.
No, on the
To 2
20th for the
hours,
Finance
hour and a
Committee
half.
meeting.
You're talking about the finance.
Finance.
Yes.
okay. I just didn't want to have
No.
you guys
Both
tripping
together.
over each other with the committee meeting. So
Yeah,
you
that's-
say the 16th, that
I'm
would
saying the 16th.
of October.
Of October.
Okay.
And the 20th of November.
Okay.
Or do you want to go to the 6th of November to?
It'd be nice
If there's enough time to gather information, or is that enough time to prepare for a public meeting?
Here's what I'm thinking is that gives plenty of time for those interested from the public to make
And you better make
arrangements
it
to be
6
there
o'clock.
rather than in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'd make
Okay.
it 6
Do you want
o'clock.
to say November 6th? 6 o'clock? Okay.
Yeah, we might have a big crowd, so.
We will have a big crowd.
And John, yours is the same thing, 6 o'clock.
Yes.
On the 20th,
20th.
yes.
You need to watch so much.
So we might have a free period before council meeting on the 6th.
Yeah, maybe, but
Probably
probably not.
not.
Okay.
No, Mark and I know from our wards, we probably won't have any free time.
Anything else, Mr. Cavan?
No. Thank you.
Okay. And the final word we'll give to Ms. Knappert.
Thank you very much. I want to just reiterate what everyone has said about the infrastructure committee meeting tonight. It was very informative. I am thrilled beyond belief that we had some talk about Gashi Street, but even more thrilled that Highland Park is going to be addressed in 2018. Both of those are in my ward, and I've gotten a lot of phone calls and comments about those. I also want to reiterate the congratulations on the accolades that the city has received. And finally, piggybacking on what Mr. Cavan said, I think it's extremely important that we have these meetings regarding the drug houses, the who's responsible for what is going on. Is it the people who rent? Is the people who live there? I know that I spend quite a bit of time talking with Ward 2 residents who are very concerned about their neighborhoods going downhill fact, I met before the infrastructure meeting tonight with a group of neighbors on Spring Street, and the police folks, the chief and the police officers know the problems that I've had on Spink Street. And so I think this is a really important issue. I think that we will get a lot of people from the public coming to talk about what the city is going to do about this. I think that we are at a bit of a crossroads where we have to decide how we're going to deal with this issue, because it's a blight on the city. Without a doubt, I have a beautiful neighborhood in my ward where people are selling their houses at less than their value to get away from these people. And that is not the direction that we want to go in Worcester. And by the same token, while not tied one to the other, I just want to point out, as I usually do at the beginning of the school year when the College of Worcester is in session, College of Worcester again is in Ward 2. I want to reiterate to the neighbors, these are kids. They're going to do things. You may have done things when you were in college. Give them a little bit of leeway. However, I want to reiterate to the college students, and I want to reiterate to the college administration, that these college students have to respect the neighbors and the neighborhoods. They are guests here in Worcester. And I don't think that the neighbors or the neighborhoods should have to tolerate those few bad eggs that go out in the community and party and raise problems. But it's not by any stretch of the imagination the majority of the kids at the College of Worcester. They are all mainly really good kids. However, I've been dealing, and the police force has been dealing for the last 3 years, with one particular fraternity that has been banned from the College of Worcester for 30 years, but has traditionally and consistently had a house in my ward where they hold parties every weekend. And I want to meet with the college administration and work together with the college administration and the city administration to get this to stop.
Amen.
And that's the end of my comment this evening. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll consider at the conclusion of tonight's meeting, I see Mr. Albright move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Silvestri. All in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.